One of the most powerful private estates in Britain had just landed in Prince William's hands, and it completely shattered Camilla's peace. For years, she moved through the estate as if it personally belonged to her, placing her sister on the payroll, opening the doors to her family whenever she wanted, and operating without anyone daring to challenge her authority. But the moment William officially took ownership, everything changed. In a move that stunned royal insiders, he reportedly removed every single member of Camilla's family from the estate, cutting off their access and influence overnight. Furious and desperate to regain their position, Camilla's relatives allegedly turned on her, pressuring and threatening her to convince King Charles to reverse William's decision. Backed into a corner, Camilla went straight to Charles and begged him to intervene, expecting the king to protect her and her family. Instead, Charles made a decision nobody saw coming. On the morning of April 26, 2026, King Charles III walked into Buckingham Palace, sat at his desk, and signed a document known as the Transfer of Sovereignty Act Phase 1, officially handing Prince William absolute ownership and control of the Duchy of Cornwall, a move that instantly stripped Camilla's family of their remaining power and confirmed that, when forced to choose, Charles had chosen his son over his wife. The Duchy of Cornwall is one of the most powerful private estates on the planet, controlling more than 135,000 acres of land spread across over 20 counties in England and Wales, including the wild open stretches of Dartmoor, the Isles of Scilly, massive agricultural holdings, luxury residential developments, and high-value commercial properties across South London. For centuries, the estate has generated enormous wealth for the royal family, dating all the way back to the 1300s, and by 2026 it was reportedly bringing in more than £1.2 billion every single year. Now every last penny of that income belonged to Prince William. But what made the situation even more explosive was not just the money, it was the way Camilla discovered it. The Queen Consort of England, the woman who had spent more than 30 years fighting to secure her place at the very centre of the British monarchy, was not even in the room when King Charles signed away control of the most powerful private estate in the country. Nobody asked for her opinion, consulted her, or even gave her. What Camilla received instead was a palace aide quietly knocking on the door of Clarence House and handing her a written summary of what King Charles had already decided and finalised behind closed doors. It was not a conversation, not a private discussion between husband and wife, and not even a warning. It was a cold formal notification, the kind normally sent to a government department you barely interact with, not to the woman holding the second most powerful position in the entire royal household. Everyone inside the palace immediately understood what the decision truly meant. This was not simply paperwork, it was a message, and Camilla understood it with devastating clarity. According to people close to the situation, the atmosphere inside Clarence House changed instantly after the aide walked away, with staff describing the building as feeling like all the air had been sucked out of it. Camilla reportedly went completely silent for nearly 3 full hours. No phone calls were made, no meetings were scheduled, no public appearances were discussed, and she did not say a single word to the aide who had delivered the document. She simply withdrew into silence while the staff around her became too nervous to interrupt her. For a woman who had survived decades of royal pressure and public scrutiny, the reaction alone showed just how deeply the decision had affected her. But the real question was what exactly was inside that document that made it so devastating. The answer reportedly stretched back several years and began with a mysterious red leather envelope that had quietly circulated through royal hands long before the public ever knew anything about it. According to palace insiders, the story traces back to a red leather envelope that Queen Elizabeth II had quietly sealed in late 2021 as her health was beginning to decline. Elizabeth reportedly did not leave the envelope behind as a sentimental gesture, but as what some senior courtiers allegedly described as a heritage lock codicil, a constitutional safeguard designed to activate under very specific circumstances. The trigger, insiders claimed, came in 2026 as King Charles's deteriorating health created growing pressure to establish Prince William as a fully empowered heir before the monarchy risked sliding into a constitutional crisis. But hidden inside that codicil was a clause known as the anticipatory obstruction mechanism, the very section that reportedly sent Camilla's family into fury. In simple terms, the clause allegedly created a permanent legal barrier around the Dutch's most valuable heritage estates, ensuring that no non-blood relative of the direct royal line could gain long-term influence, residency rights, employment protections, or financial control over those properties once sovereignty officially transferred to William. The clause reportedly ensured that no non-blood relative of the Windsor family could ever commercially develop, exploit, lease, or establish any kind of long-term institutional foothold within those properties. Queen Elizabeth II never allegedly wrote Camilla's name anywhere inside the document because, according to palace insiders, she did not need to. Everyone who read the codicil immediately understood who the restrictions were truly designed to block. And that raises the question of why Elizabeth would go to such extraordinary legal lengths to protect Prince William's inheritance in the first place. According to insiders, the answer was rooted in a deep and lasting unease that Elizabeth privately carried about Camilla's place within the institution itself, an unease she was far too disciplined and politically careful to ever publicly express. Still, many believe those concerns quietly shaped major royal decisions behind the scenes for years. Elizabeth had witnessed firsthand how the affair between Charles and Camilla tore through the royal family during the 1980s and 1990s, and she had watched Princess Diana emotionally deteriorate under the pressure in full public view. Palace sources claimed that while Elizabeth eventually accepted that she could not stop, according to palace insiders, Queen Elizabeth II allegedly made sure that Prince William's inheritance was sealed so tightly that nobody connected to Camilla's side of the family could ever gain influence over it. Many inside royal circles reportedly viewed it as one of the final protective measures Elizabeth put in place for her grandson before her death, knowing she would likely never live to see the mechanism activated herself. What makes the situation even more dramatic is the claim that Camilla had already sensed something like this was being prepared long before it became public. In the final months of Elizabeth's life, whispers reportedly spread through palace channels that constitutional lawyers were quietly drafting sensitive legal documents connected to the duchy. After hearing those rumors, Camilla allegedly sent an intermediary to discreetly discover what was being prepared, only to receive a cold and immediate refusal. According to insiders, nobody within the upper level of the royal legal structure was willing to allow someone who had not yet formally become queen consort access to sealed instructions from a reigning monarch concerning Prince William's future inheritance. The fact that Camilla allegedly tried to investigate the matter at all was seen by some palace figures as proof that she already feared Elizabeth was constructing legal protection specifically designed to permanently shut her family out, and no matter how hard she tried, she could not get close enough to stop it. The written summary that arrived at Clarence House that Tuesday morning informed Camilla that the inheritance was officially signed, sealed, and delivered, but what the document did not reveal was that Prince William was far from finished. Taking control of the royal empire was only the opening move. What followed, according to palace insiders, was far more personal and directly targeted at members of Camilla's inner circle who had allegedly spent years benefiting from access, influence, and privileges tied to the royal institution. The first person reportedly affected was Camilla's son, Tom Parker Bowles, who had spent nearly 2 decades building a highly recognizable public profile as one of Britain's best-known food writers and culinary personalities. Through best-selling cookbooks, restaurant criticism, magazine columns, and television appearances, Tom had developed a successful career that insiders claimed carried an unspoken but powerful advantage. He was the son of the Queen Consort. According to royal commentators, he never needed to openly advertise the connection because the association alone quietly opened doors, strengthened professional relationships, and added a layer of. Everyone in Britain's elite social and media circles already understood exactly what the Parker Bowles name represented and exactly which doors it quietly opened without anyone ever needing to say it out loud. But according to palace insiders, in 2023 something happened that exposed just how far members of Camilla's extended family had allegedly been reaching into Duchy of Cornwall assets long before Prince William formally took control. A private investment group reportedly connected to a hospitality company linked to the Shand family, Camilla's maternal side, submitted a formal development inquiry to the Duchy's management board requesting a long-term lease on a commercial property in Kennington, South London. On the surface, the proposal appeared completely ordinary, presenting itself as a luxury members' club centered around British aristocratic culinary heritage. But insiders later claimed that beneath the polished presentation sat a carefully constructed maze of holding companies, led corporate entities, and shell organizations allegedly designed for one purpose: to conceal the Shand family's involvement from anyone reviewing the application. According to reports from within royal circles, the structure was intentionally built to obscure who ultimately controlled the investment group, making the proposal appear independent while quietly maintaining ties back to Camilla's wider family network. Everyone in Britain's elite social and media circles already understood exactly what the Parker Bowles name represented and exactly which doors it quietly opened without anyone ever needing to say it out loud. But according to palace insiders, in 2023 something happened that exposed just how far members of Camilla's extended family had allegedly been reaching into Duchy of Cornwall assets long before Prince William formally took control. A private investment group reportedly connected to a hospitality company linked to the Shand family, Camilla's maternal side, submitted a formal development inquiry to the Duchy's management board requesting a long-term lease on a commercial property in Kennington, South London. On the surface, the proposal appeared completely ordinary, presenting itself as a luxury members' club centered around British aristocratic culinary heritage. But insiders later claimed that beneath the polished presentation sat a carefully constructed maze of holding companies, led corporate entities, and shell organizations allegedly designed for one purpose: to conceal the Shand family's involvement from anyone reviewing the application. According to reports from within royal circles, the structure was intentionally built to obscure who ultimately controlled the investment group, making the proposal appear independent while quiet. According to palace insiders, after April 2026 arrangements like that were never going to survive under Prince William's control. As part of the formal transfer of power, William's legal team reportedly launched a sweeping financial and contractual audit of the Duchy's historical agreements, reopening decades of records connected to some of its most valuable estates. During that process, they allegedly uncovered paperwork tied to Oakage, one of the Duchy's most historically significant agricultural properties, revealing a lease agreement that had quietly existed since the 1980s. The contract, reportedly approved years earlier by a minor royal household official, granted a farming cooperative with documented links to the Parker Bowles agricultural network in Wiltshire preferential grazing rights on sections of Oakage land at rates far below actual market value. In simple terms, the cooperative had allegedly been allowed to use valuable royal land for an annual fee worth only a fraction of what the property should realistically have generated. While the arrangement was technically legal at the time it was signed, its discovery reportedly confirmed long-held suspicions within William's inner circle that the Parker Bowles family's relationship with royal assets had not been recent or accidental, but deeply rooted in agreements and privileges buried inside decades-old paperwork that few people had ever closely examined. According to insiders, the lease was reportedly cancelled almost immediately after the April 26 signing ceremony, and many people inside palace circles later claimed it became one of the key discoveries that pushed the already icy relationship between Kensington Palace and Clarence House into what felt like silent open warfare. There were no public confrontations, no dramatic statements, and no visible royal feud for cameras to capture, but behind closed doors the atmosphere allegedly became deeply hostile. Yet even as damaging as the situation was for Tom Parker Bowles, insiders claimed it was nothing compared to the blow that soon struck Camilla's younger sister, Annabel Elliot. For years, Annabel had reportedly occupied one of the most comfortable and least publicly scrutinized positions connected to the royal household after King Charles personally appointed her as an interior design consultant. The role allegedly granted her something extraordinarily valuable: direct professional access to some of the most prestigious royal residences in Britain along with access to royal funding tied to refurbishment and restoration projects. According to royal commentators, Annabel received substantial payments through royal household budgets to oversee decoration and redesign work at properties including Highgrove House, King Charles's beloved private estate in Gloucestershire, along with additional projects. According to royal insiders, Annabel Elliot also became heavily involved in refurbishment work connected to Birkhall, the Scottish retreat where King Charles spent some of the most private and personal periods of his life. For years, royal finance analysts had reportedly raised quiet concerns about whether the contracts connected to those projects had ever been properly open to competitive tender, the standard process where multiple qualified firms are publicly invited to bid for high-value work. Critics inside royal circles allegedly questioned whether the arrangements instead reflected a steady flow of royal money moving directly toward the Queen Consort's own sister through projects personally approved and protected by Charles himself. Those concerns never gained serious momentum because, as insiders claimed, while Charles remained fully in control and Camilla's position inside the monarchy was secure, very few people with real authority had any interest in challenging the arrangement. To understand why Annabel's role became so significant after William assumed control, it is important to recognize that senior interior design consultants at the royal household level do far more than simply choose furniture or approve paint colors. According to palace sources, they oversee major restoration budgets, coordinate teams of architects and contractors, influence procurement decisions, and help shape the presentation, function, and long-term image of some of the most important royal residences in Britain. In practical terms, the position carried not only prestige and financial value, but also deep institutional influence inside the royal system itself. According to palace insiders, the role carried influence far beyond interior decoration. The residences Annabel helped oversee were regularly used to host visiting heads of state, foreign diplomats, and powerful international guests, meaning the financial exposure tied to those projects was enormous. More importantly, the access attached to her position reportedly reached deep into the private inner workings of the royal household itself. Annabel Elliot had allegedly spent years moving through private wings of royal residences that many senior courtiers rarely entered, doing so with full institutional approval and direct royal backing. Insiders claimed that the real value of her position was not only financial, but also the quiet influence and connections it created for everyone around her. Very few people outside palace circles fully understood how much soft power came with that level of trusted access. When Prince William reportedly began reviewing royal household spending after taking control, Annabel's contracts were flagged almost immediately. According to sources close to the situation, his response was swift, direct, and unforgiving. The contracts were allegedly cancelled outright. There was no lengthy review process, no carefully managed transition period, and no quiet arrangement allowing her to step away gracefully while preserving appearances. Her professional access to royal residences was reportedly terminated almost overnight, and insiders said the decision sent shockwaves through Clarence's house, but what made the move even more devastating was that the issue reportedly extended far beyond financial audits or contract reviews. According to palace figures, attention soon shifted toward Annabel's private residence itself and the years of quiet royal gatherings, personal meetings, and behind-the-scenes relationships that had allegedly taken place there away from public view. Annabel's home was the place where Charles and Camilla had conducted their secret meetings during the long years of the affair, the years when Diana was being slowly and completely destroyed from the inside out. It was inside Annabel's house that the relationship was sheltered, protected, and hidden. William has known this for most of his adult life, and he has carried it the way you carry something that never gets lighter, no matter how many years go by. So, when William signed that order, terminating Annabel's contracts, he was not simply cutting off a decorator. He was walking back into the history that had already taken everything from him that mattered most, and he was closing it permanently with a pen. The termination of Annabel's contracts was a quiet administrative action delivered through official channels. The kind of thing that looks completely routine on paper, but feels like an earthquake to the people it lands on. And the earthquake hit Camilla's world with a force that nobody around her had ever seen before. Because what followed was an unsettling phone call. And inside. According to palace insiders, somewhere behind a closed door inside Clarence's house, the pressure finally became too much for Camilla to contain. The dismissal of Annabel Elliot reportedly hit her world like a wrecking ball, triggering one of the most emotionally charged moments people around her claimed they had witnessed in decades. Staff members allegedly described the atmosphere inside the residence as tense, chaotic, and filled with panic as the consequences of Prince William's decisions continued spreading through Camilla's inner circle. Then the phone calls began, and according to insiders, they did not stop. Tom Parker Bowles reportedly called first, his voice described as tight with desperation as he watched years of carefully built influence and professional stability begin collapsing around the family. Sources claimed he urged Camilla to intervene immediately, insisting that she speak directly to King Charles before the situation became irreversible. According to those accounts, Tom allegedly made it clear that William's actions were no longer just about Annabelle or isolated contracts. In his view, the crackdown threatened the entire network of relationships, privileges, and quiet arrangements that had gradually formed around Camilla's position within the monarchy over many years. Insiders claimed the message to Camilla was blunt: if she did not push back quickly and forcefully, there would. Laura Lopez reportedly called as well, quieter than her brother but carrying the same suffocating urgency, adding even more pressure onto Camilla as the situation around the family continued spiraling. According to insiders, Camilla managed to hold herself together through both conversations because maintaining composure, even under extreme pressure, had become one of the defining survival skills of her entire royal life. No matter what chaos unfolded around her, she had spent decades learning how to remain controlled in public and private alike, but palace sources claimed everything changed when Annabelle Elliott finally called. Camilla reportedly took the conversation inside her private room at Clarence House and quietly shut the door behind her. Staff members waiting outside later said she remained inside for nearly an hour. They could not hear most of the discussion because Camilla had allegedly mastered the art of conducting painful conversations in near silence after spending more than 30 years navigating royal scrutiny and palace politics. Then, according to those accounts, somewhere in the middle of the call her voice suddenly broke through the door with such force that everyone standing in the corridor froze instantly. It was not described as a raised voice or controlled anger. Staff allegedly said it sounded like a scream. "You cannot do that." And then, just as suddenly, the room reportedly fell silent again, leaving an atmosphere so heavy and tense that nobody outside the door dared move or speak. According to palace insiders, the silence that followed inside Clarence House felt even worse than the scream itself. Staff waiting outside later described the atmosphere as tense and unbearable, as though something irreversible had just happened behind the closed door. When Camilla finally came out, insiders claimed she looked completely shaken. Her face was pale, her eyes glassy, and the calm composure that had protected her for decades seemed gone. People around her said she looked genuinely frightened in a way they had never seen before. Sources later claimed that something said during the call with Annabelle Elliott had broken through every emotional wall Camilla had spent years building. What exactly was said has never been confirmed, but many inside royal circles believe the conversation revealed just how serious the situation around her family. According to palace insiders, Annabelle Elliott had spent years acting as one of the quiet protectors of the relationship between King Charles and Camilla. Sources claimed she opened her home, absorbed enormous social risk, and helped keep their relationship hidden during years when public exposure could have caused massive damage to the monarchy. In return, many believed her later royal role became both financially comfortable and institutionally powerful. But after Prince William reportedly stripped away those positions with a single administrative decision, insiders claimed Annabelle had no intention of accepting the loss quietly. According to speculation inside royal circles, the message she delivered during that private phone call was brutally simple: help restore her position or risk having damaging information exposed. Exactly what Annabelle may have been referring to has never been confirmed publicly. However, palace staff later claimed Camilla's reaction made one thing unmistakably clear. Whatever fears had surfaced during that conversation appeared serious enough to shake the carefully controlled image Camilla had maintained for decades inside the royal family. Charles had ultimately sided with William. What followed, according to those inside palace planning circles, was a quiet but decisive correction to the entire structure of the coronation arrangements. Camilla's team had initially argued that Tom and Laura should be granted visible ceremonial roles, reflecting their position within the Queen Consort's immediate family. But William's response, delivered through senior intermediaries, was reportedly unambiguous. The coronation was a constitutional and bloodline-driven event, and Camilla's children had no formal standing within it. Faced with that position, Charles did not escalate the dispute. Instead, he accepted William's framework, choosing stability and institutional clarity over a personal concession to Camilla's side of the family. The decision, while presented internally as administrative necessity, was understood by those close to the process as a clear alignment with William's long-term vision of a tightly defined royal structure. So when Camilla now stood in front of him, recalling that history, the weight of it all came crashing into the present. This was not the first time she felt her position being quietly limited in favor of William's authority. But it was the first time she saw it so openly. Here it is in clear *** paragraph form, proper structure, no extra line breaks ***. Charles could see at the moment Camilla walked into the room. The usual composure she carried like armor was gone. She sat down slowly across from him, as if the weight of everything she had been carrying for days had finally become too heavy to stand under. And then she spoke, without filtering, without softening, without the careful political language she usually relied on. She told him about Annabelle's contracts being cut, about Tom's growing panic, about Laura's pressure, and about the phone call that had shattered whatever stability she had left. Her voice broke as she reached the end, but she forced herself to continue, telling him everything that had been building around her like a closing wall. Finally, she looked at him, not as queen consort, not as a public figure, but as a wife under pressure, and asked him to fix it. "Charles, you have to speak to William," she said, her voice trembling at the edges. "You have to make him understand what this is doing to us, to this family. You have to stop this." Charles did not answer immediately. He simply sat there, absorbing everything she had said, the silence between them growing heavier with every second. When he finally spoke, his tone was calm, almost too calm, and that calmness cut deeper than anger ever could.